The Men in Blackwood Forest. I never believed the stories about Blackwood Forest. When my grandfather used to talk about the lights between the trees, I thought he was losing his mind. Everyone on Cedar Street did. The forest sat directly behind our neighborhood like a giant wall of darkness. Tall pine trees stretched for miles, blocking almost all sunlight during the day and turning the woods into a black void at night. Nobody really went there anymore. Not after the disappearances. People on Cedar Street avoided talking about it, but every few years someone vanished near the forest. A hunter, a teenager, a homeless man. No bodies were ever found. When my grandfather died, my mother inherited his old house at the end of the street. Since she didn't want it, I moved in temporarily while attending college nearby. The house felt wrong from the first night. The wooden floors creaked constantly. The pipes rattled at random hours. And every night at exactly 3:33 a.m., I heard whistling outside my bedroom window. The sound came from the forest. Slow, weak, almost human. The first few nights, I ignored it, until I noticed something strange. Every house on Cedar Street turned their lights off at the same time every night. Even the street lights stopped working. It was like the entire neighborhood went dead for a few minutes. Then the whistling would begin. One night, I finally asked my neighbor about it. Mrs. Harper lived across the street. She had probably been there for 40 years. When I mentioned the whistling, her face went pale. She stepped closer to me and whispered, "Never look into the forest after midnight." Then she shut the door in my face. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 3:33 a.m., the power went out again. The house became completely silent. Then I heard it, whistling, closer this time. I slowly walked to my bedroom window and pulled the curtain back slightly. At first, I saw nothing except trees moving in the wind. Then I noticed lights. Tiny lights floating between the trees. Candles, dozens of them, and surrounding the candles, people. Tall figures wearing black hooded robes stood perfectly still deep inside the forest. My heart started pounding. There had to be at least 20 of them. None of them moved. None of them spoke. They just stood there facing something in the center of the circle. Then one of them slowly raised their head toward my house. I immediately dropped the curtain. I don't know why, but I suddenly felt terrified that they knew I was watching. The next morning, I convinced myself it was probably some weird local cult or secret gathering. But something still bothered me. The way they stood there, perfectly still, like statues. Later that afternoon, I went into my grandfather's basement looking for old tools. That's when I found the tapes. An entire shelf filled with VHS tapes. Every single one had the same word written across it in black marker. Blackwood. I found an old television and VHS player covered in dust. Most of the tapes were damaged, but one still worked. Static filled the screen before a shaky recording appeared. The footage showed my grandfather standing inside the forest at night. He looked terrified. Behind him, I could see hooded figures holding candles. My grandfather whispered into the camera, "If anyone finds this, do not go into the forest after midnight." The camera shook violently. You don't understand what lives out there. Then the recording cut to another scene. A massive shape stood between the trees in the distance. At first I thought it was another person. Then it moved. The thing was impossibly tall. Its arms hung nearly to the ground. Its skin looked gray and stretched tightly across its body. And its eyes, bright white. My grandfather began breathing heavily. "They think they're worshiping it," he whispered. "But they're feeding it." The tape suddenly distorted into loud static. Then the screen went black. I sat there frozen. My grandfather had always told strange stories, but this felt different, real. That night, I locked every door in the house. At exactly 3:33 a.m., the power died again. I grabbed a flashlight and looked outside. The forest was glowing. Hundreds of tiny candle lights flickered between the trees. The hooded figures had returned, but this time, they were closer, much closer. standing just beyond my backyard. I could hear whispering now, low voices speaking together in some strange language. Then all the whispering stopped at once. Every figure slowly turned toward my house. My stomach dropped. One of them pointed directly at my window. The others began walking forward. Slowly, silently, I backed away from the window. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the flashlight. Then I heard something downstairs. A knock. 3 slow knocks against the front door. I froze. Another 3 knocks echoed through the house. Then another. Boom, boom, boom. The front door rattled violently. I grabbed a kitchen knife even though I knew it wouldn't help. The knocking stopped. For a few seconds, everything became silent again. Then I heard footsteps. Inside the house. Slow footsteps moving across the wooden floor downstairs. I couldn't breathe. Someone was inside. The footsteps stopped directly beneath my bedroom. Then an old voice whispered from downstairs, "Come outside." My blood ran cold. It sounded exactly like my grandfather. Another whisper followed, "They're waiting for you." I forced myself to move toward the bedroom door. Every instinct told me to stay hidden, but I needed to see what was downstairs. I slowly opened the door and stepped into the hallway. The house was completely dark except for faint moonlight coming through the windows. I walked toward the staircase, and halfway down, I saw someone standing near the front door. A tall hooded figure, motionless, watching me. Its face was hidden in darkness. Then it slowly lifted one hand and pointed toward the forest outside. I heard movement behind the trees. Huge movement. Branches snapping. Heavy footsteps shaking the ground. Something enormous was moving through the forest. Coming closer. The hooded figure tilted its head toward me. Then, in a voice that sounded wet and broken, it whispered, "It knows your blood." Suddenly, every light in the house turned on at once. The figure vanished. I ran to the window. The hooded people were gone. The candles had disappeared. The forest stood silent again. But deep between the trees, I saw 2 glowing white eyes staring directly at me. And they did not blink.